What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and happy Black Monday, or maybe not so happy Black Monday in the NFL for you Giants fans. The New York Giants deciding today that they will retain General Manager Joe Schoen and head coach Brian Daboll. John Mara put out a statement this morning. He's actually meeting with the media as we're recording this right now, speaking to them and explaining the decision. And it's a decision that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me personally. I don't think Alex agrees with it either. I know a lot of Giants fans do agree with it. They wanted Daboll and Schoen to be back for another year, but we're going to go ahead and react to this news, give our honest take on it, tell you why we think it's a bad idea, tell you why we could be wrong about that and why it could end up being a good idea. Man, and that's really what I want to clarify here first and foremost, Alex. I pray that I'm wrong. I want to be wrong about this, but this feels like a mistake for the New York Giants. I think this is a bad decision, but again, I hope that I'm wrong. I hope Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen prove me wrong, and the New York Giants are a playoff team in 2025, 26, and 27. But I just don't see that happening. This roster feels like it's so far off from competing. They have holes at so many major positions, quarterback being the clear and obvious weakness of this team, and there really is no clear and obvious path to getting that quarterback this upcoming offseason. But now we have to trust Joe Schoen with a playoff mandate, no less. John Mara basically issued them a mandate saying this 2025 season is playoff or bust, or we will reevaluate and fire you at the end of next season. That being the case, you've got a desperate GM who needs to buy wins immediately. He's going to be making short-sighted decisions, spending big in free agency on mid-free agents just to buy some wins immediately rather than building a roster for the long term. This was always my biggest concern. I've been saying this for the last 2 months on the channel. If the Giants retain this, guys, they're retaining a desperate GM and a desperate head coach who is standing on thin ice needing to make waves in the 2025 season when their roster is not ready to do that. So I'm very concerned about this. This is not a decision that I'm too happy with, but again, we're going to go ahead and react. We'll try and look at it from a positive angle as well here. But Alex, how are you feeling today? I will say this. We can rejoice. The New York Giants 2024 season is over. Thank God it's finally done. We don't have to watch them just kind of sleepwalk through games anymore. But, how are you feeling now with this news that the New York Giants are retaining both Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll?
Well, I mean, after yesterday's game, Anthony, I kind of got the sense that was happening. Brian Daboll was smiling, turnover. He was smiling, going for it on 4th and 7. He's smiling when they don't get it. He was coaching like a guy that was safe. And apparently they made this decision on Friday. They had a conversation a couple hours, and they steered John Mara back on course and convinced him. But I just read a quote here from John Mara that really makes my blood boil. And I'm going to try to rein in my emotions, but I can't promise anything in this episode because there's just so much incompetency coming from this organization right now. John Mara was asked, do you think this roster is better 3 years after Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll took over? You know what his comment was? I'm not sure I'm all that confident. We are 3 years into Joe Schoen's roster, the team that he's built from the ground up. He shredded the whole team. This is his roster through and through. And John Mara doesn't think this roster is better. And I can pretty confidently say, Anthony, that 3 years ago, our roster was dog shit. You know what I mean? It was horrible. And we have a worse roster now, and we're still keeping these guys? Kind of a crazy situation to be in. Look, the Giants right now are coming off probably the most miserable 2024 season, the worst season I've seen in my lifetime. We've seen some bad years, Anthony. This one was a slow death. And it wasn't even a slow death. We were like, all right, you know what? I can live with these losses as long as we have the first overall pick and we can take the quarterback that we want. But no, the Giants had to win in week 17, and then in week 18, they laid down and died. What the hell was that about? They won a game. They won in week 17. They put all their effort in. They win. They go. They do all the right things. And then they just lay down and die. I'm like, wait, all you had to do was lay down and die in week 17 too. And we could have got Cam Ward. We could have got the quarterback we wanted. But no, now we have the 3rd overall pick. The Titans need a quarterback probably. The Browns, apparently Deshaun Watson's injury just got set back. His Achilles injury. They don't even know if his 2025 season he's going to play in 2025, which now means them taking a quarterback is more likely than ever. So the Giants could walk into the 3rd overall pick and not have a quarterback to choose from. People saying they haven't had their chance to get a quarterback. Well, buddy, news to you, news to us. We're not going to be able to get the guy that we want anyway. because the Patriots were the only option for us to trade up if they were going to go in that direction, and they won. And now they're drafting behind us. So the Giants are going to have to sit there at 3 and decide to take a big risk on taking a guy that may not be worth the 3rd overall pick. We know Drew Aller, maybe he ends up declaring again, which would be great for us. If Drew Aller decides to declare, that would be a massive opportunity for the Giants to get a guy with upside. He may even go before Sanders, to be quite honest with you. So I do believe right now the Giants are in wait-and-see mode. But whatever John Mara, whatever they said to him to convince them to stay, must have been some Houdini stuff, dude. I mean, there must have been some crazy amount of convincing to get that done.
So I agree with you. I think that Joe Schoen is probably a very smooth talker. I think he had to have done some really hard work to convince John Mara to keep him, but I actually also want to take an outside perspective from this. I think not only did the Giants have Schoen and Daboll convince Mara to retain them, I think John Mara's reported conversations with potential candidates around the NFL convinced him to retain Schoen and Daboll. And what I mean is this: if you guys didn't see the report from Diana Russini of The Athletic, she's reporting this morning that over the last week or so, John Mara had been reaching out to different head coaching candidates and GM candidates around the NFL, doing background work and sending out feelers for the New York Giants head coaching position and GM position. Basically doing research and asking guys, hey, if this job becomes available, would you take it? Would you be interested in it? And by the end of all that research and background work, he decides to stick with Brian Daboll. What does that tell you, Alex? It tells you that this Giants job wasn't a very attractive one to the best GMs and head coach candidates around the NFL. It tells you that this is the job that nobody wants. This is the job that we are being stuck with Schoen and Daboll because there are no better options, because none of the better options want to be in New York working underneath John Mara. So that's the reality of the situation. The Giants aren't confident in Schoen and Daboll. In fact, I mean, John Mara basically said as much. He's not all that confident. He's had second thoughts about these guys, but he doesn't have a better alternative because nobody wants to work for the guy. Nobody wants to coach the New York Giants. Nobody wants to be the general manager of the New York Giants, especially now that they no longer hold the number 1 overall pick and are locked in to the number 3 pick. If they want to get the number 1 pick, they're going to have to trade their future first round pick, and that's just going to fuck the next general manager coming in if the Giants do that. So that's the reality of the situation. The Giants aren't sticking with Schoen and Daboll because they're confident in Schoen and Daboll. They're sticking with Schoen and Daboll because nobody else wants to be here. And that's the reality of the situation. And that's a very sad truth to kind of, it's a tough pill to swallow if you're John Mara and if you're a fan of the New York Giants. And if you're thinking back on 10 years ago, how historic and respected this franchise was, and now over the last 10 years, we've seen them devolve into the bottomless pit that they are, devolve to the bottom of the NFL. We are the new Cleveland Browns. We are the New York Jets. We are that caliber of a franchise. We're barely even a franchise at this point. We're an embarrassment to the NFL, and that's why nobody wants to work here, and that's why Schoen and Daboll are coming back, truthfully. It's not because John Mara is confident in these guys. It's not because Steve Tisch wants to keep these guys in the building. It's because nobody else wants to be in this building. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on that? Just the fact that John Mara, it's been confirmed by Russini and a couple other reporters, he did background work. He sent out feelers. He spoke to potential head coach and GM candidates, and he still went with Schoen and Daboll. That tells me nobody wants this job.
Nobody wants. Why would you want this job? You're going to be inheriting the 3rd overall pick. You can't take the quarterback you want. And you're inheriting a team full of holes and roster problems and regressing players and bad scheme fits. You know what I mean? This team is kind of a misfit toy right now. Like, there are players on this team that do not fit the mold. Jalen Hyatt was the biggest waste of a 3rd round pick I've ever seen. This guy has literally not played. Literally not played. Darius Slayton's barely even playing at this point. He's just running cardio.
Hyatt's a waste of a 3rd round pick and change. They traded up to draft him. They gave extra picks.
I mean, dude,
get him.
What are we even doing here? Like, yeah, the rookie draft class this past year was excellent, but how could you possibly miss on Malik Neighbors? That was the easiest pick you could possibly make. I'm not going to sit here and pat Joe Schoen on the back saying Malik Neighbors was a great selection. Anyone and their mom could have decided to do that. So I think right now, and also I also want to throw in the fact that we've seen massive regression from players in year 2. I need to see that this rookie class can take a big step forward in year 2 and not regress like Deonte Banks, JMS, Evan Neal, like every Kayvon Thibodeau. How many more guys do I have to list off that have become absolute either useless pieces or average pieces? Right now, look, like you said, nobody wants to come here. We lost the 1st overall pick with that win, and it actually gave Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll life, because now the Giants aren't an attractive destination because you can't just walk into this team and have the first overall pick and get your quarterback. You're going to have to mortgage your future or get one of the worst options at the position in a bad draft class. So not only are we not attractive, but this roster is so flawed, so problematic that you're talking about full-scale, like, foundational rebuild again from another regime. So I just don't think it's an attractive solution. There are so many other teams. I'd rather go to the Jets than if I was a team, if I was a coach or a prospective GM looking for a new job, because the Jets have an elite defensive core. They have a good offensive line. They have a host of playmakers on offense, like Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. I know he's going into a contract year, but like, listen, the Jets have talent. The Giants are devoid of a lot of it. So like, there's no one that would want to come here. We would have ended up scraping the bottom of the barrel. So John Mara had to say to himself, I have to convince myself that Coach of the Year Brian Daboll still exists. I have to convince myself that Joe Schoen, the draft class they just had, they can do it again and they cannot regress. But that starts with getting the right coaches in here, man. Shane Bowen has to be fired. He has to be fired. That dude did more damage to Deonte Banks, did more damage to some of the players on this roster than I've seen in quite some time. The coaching has been horrible. They need to bring in a scheme, a coach with a scheme that is going to elevate the pieces on this roster. Shane Bowen made our secondary look like dog water. And the reason that they rank somewhat highly is because teams ran over 100 yards against us every single week. They didn't need to throw the ball that much. I'll let you speak on that.
I gotta jump in there. I don't necessarily disagree with you. Shane Bowen made the secondary look like dog water. Sure, the secondary was dog water.
Yeah, we talked about it all offseason.
Fucking sucks.
Yes, we talked about it all offseason.
We were like, hey, cornerback. We need a cornerback. Hey, don't let McKinney go because we don't have a real safety. Hey, sign a safety now that McKinney's gone. All offseason, we were pounding the table and screaming on this channel, the Giants need to address their secondary. They never did. Sure, they drafted Drew Phillips and Tyler
Adoree
Newman.
Jackson.
You're relying, and Adoree Jackson a week before the season started. You're relying on a washed-up veteran who you didn't even want on your team after a failed 2023 season to play cornerback for you, and you're relying on two rookies to play 100% of snaps. Basically just go out there and be the best rookies at their position in the NFL. That's not a winning strategy. That's not sustainable. And that's why the New York Giants secondary was so bad this year. Even though all offseason long, we saw it, all of you saw it, everybody saw it, the Giants secondary had a clear lack of talent and experience, and Joe Schoen did nothing to improve upon it. So yeah, Shane Bowen deserves a lot of the blame because his defense was bad, but you know what? Oftentimes, Alex, I thought that defense played well in first halves and ran out of gas in the second half because Brian Daboll's shitty offense couldn't score goddamn points or stay on the field. So I don't know how bad the defense truly was. I don't know how bad Shane Bowen truly was. I think he's the hardest one out of all of them to evaluate because we didn't really get to see him work with any good players in that secondary. Sure, there's a couple good players, but that's a bad secondary that he was handed. Plus, his defense had to deal with the fact that they were on the field constantly because of how bad the head coach / offensive coordinator Brian Daboll's offense was. So really tough to evaluate Shane Bowen for me. I don't think he's great, and yes, I'd be looking for candidates to replace him, but at the same time, tough to evaluate that defense and tough to evaluate Bowen's job when he was handed the worst and least experienced secondary in football, and his defense was on the field every single minute, it felt like. So that's all I'll say on to kind of defend Bowen. Again, I'd still probably fire him anyway, but it's really hard to put more blame on him. I'm putting the majority of the blame on Daboll and Shane. Yeah. But Alex, I want to move on from this. I know you probably have more to say, but we'll get back into it because I got a quote here.
That are really freaking irritating me.
Oh, this quote from John Mara, I need to get your take on immediately. Ready for it?
Yeah.
Well, if I had thought that we were tanking either one of those games, I would have fired everybody. We are not going to do that in this organization as long as I'm standing on this side of the grass. So, end quote there. Let me hear your unfiltered thoughts on John Mara saying he will never allow this team to tank, and that if he thought they were tanking in the final weeks of the season, everybody would be fired.
Dude, they tanked yesterday. They literally tanked yesterday. They went for it on 4th and 7. They were just having fun out there. They were not trying. Malik Neighbors was basically just out there running cardio half the time. He had a couple of big catches, but they were not peppering him with targets like they usually do. They took him out for the final drive when they had a chance to go and tie the game. They tanked yesterday, bro. Like it was so obvious they were going for it in situations they never have this season, right? They had Jalen Hyatt play more snaps yesterday than I've ever seen. What are we talking about? What are we talking about right now? This is the most contradictory bullshit I've ever heard. They say one thing and they do another every single week with this team. And not to mention, And let's talk about bad practice, guys. This is what really concerns me the most, Anthony. In another quote I'm going to float to you right now. It better not, this is what John Mara just said about how long it should take the Giants to improve. It better not take too long because I've just about run out of patience. That is so bad because
Then why are they still here?
Not only that, but he's going to let Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll draft a quarterback just for this team to get absolutely whacked in 2025 because our schedule is hard. And how can you expect a team in a bad quarterback class with a rookie quarterback to have a good season? It's not realistic. It's not realistic. It's unrealistic. I don't understand how John Mara is coming out and saying stuff like this, expecting this team to turn things around, show any sense of competency. I don't get it, man. Like this is contradictory. You do not strap your head coach and GM with that type of rhetoric when they need to get a quarterback, because if he ends up firing them in 2025, you're going to have to turn the page again anyway. Like this is so backward in so many ways, man.
Dude, the amount of pressure being placed on Schoen and Daboll to make the playoffs in 2025 is completely irresponsible and unrealistic. This is a roster that just proved throughout the course of the season is not close to competing. Look at the teams that missed the playoffs this year, Alex. I mean, yes, I know that the Giants beat the Seahawks, but the Seahawks are a damn good football team. And I mean, even Atlanta dog walked the New York Giants 3 weeks ago, Alex. Atlanta missed the playoffs just narrowly. That team is way closer to the playoffs, just walked all over. I mean, they missed the playoffs. They're not even in the playoffs, and they dog walked the New York Giants. So the Giants were getting beat up by non-playoff teams that aren't viewed as truly competitive. The Giants are in another realm of non-competitive. They are the worst team in football. This is not a one-year fix-it situation. This is not like what the Washington Commanders had last year. Washington Commanders brought in new ownership, a new GM, new head coach, and a new quarterback. The Giants are now expecting a new quarterback to step in and fix all of the other shit that they didn't fix. That's just not going to happen. Truly, I can't imagine that it will. Listen, again, I hope that I'm wrong. I hope a new quarterback steps in here and the Giants are contenders overnight. But look at this roster. Look at the state of it. Now you have a GM who's going to be completely desperate to win games immediately because the owner has pretty much told him, if you don't win games this year, you're done. Your job is on the line. You will be fired next year if we don't win about 9 games next season or more. So if that's the case, how do you expect this guy to make long-term decisions for this organization this offseason? I don't. I expect Joe Schoen to go out there, make another ridiculous blockbuster trade, sacrificing draft capital to add some prized free agent on a franchise tag, and then go out there and spend $100 million in free agency, and then probably go out there and draft some players who are all going to play 100% of snaps. That's how they got into this mess, and that's how they're going to stay in this mess, because that's what a desperate GM who needs to keep his job, that's how they behave, and that's how he's going to behave this offseason. And ultimately, that's going to hurt the New York Giants, and this is the thing that John Mara never seems to understand. That doesn't hurt them in 2025. That probably buys them some wins in 2025. It hurts them in 2026, 27, and 28 because they've sacrificed assets and they've signed 30-year-old players to long-term deals, hoping for immediate impact and success rather than signing young, youthful, rising, ascending players to long-term contracts. If the Giants were trying to build for the future, Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney would still be on this team. They would have signed these young ascending talents that they still had on their roster. Instead, they tried to patchwork this team, bring in some free agents, and then build through the draft, but really just address all their needs in the draft while taking the best players available in free agency. That's backwards logic. That's how a bad GM operates, and that's how the New York Giants operate under Joe Schoen. So I'm really at a loss for words. Clearly not, because I can't stop talking about this because I'm really pissed off, but I'm stunned. I can't believe that after all of this, after John Mara sat down and spoke to these guys, spoke around the league and tried to figure out what the next step was, he determined that it was to retain the general manager who handed out arguably the worst contract in the history of the NFL, if not top 3. The only contract that might be worse than the Daniel Jones contract, Alex, is the Deshaun Watson contract. Other than that, there's not much of a competitor. The Daniel Jones contract was that bad. It was an awful deal that Joe Schoen handed to Daniel Jones, and he's going to survive that mess somehow. I think in and of itself, that contract is a fireable offense. But on top of that, look at the 2022 draft class. There's maybe 2 to 3 contributors. 2023, they all suck. Nobody on that team has lived up to the hype or expectations from that draft class. So, and then 2024, sure, yeah, he knocked it out of the park. Those guys are still all rookies. They've got next year to fuck it up somehow. So I don't know how you're putting all of your stock into a rookie draft class and using that as your issue of confidence to your general manager when everything else that he's done and every other piece of his operation has been a complete and utter failure. So You are taking a GM that for 3 years has failed upwards and asking him to finally be good in 2025. You are asking the world of a guy who can't give that to you, in my opinion. So I'm expecting a bad 2025 season. I'm expecting the Giants to blow it up in 2026. And on top of all that, ruin the career of a rookie quarterback, because this is what they did to Daniel Jones. I was never huge on Daniel Jones, but I'll even admit the Giants failed Daniel Jones several times.
Yeah.
He failed them. I've said that, but the Giants also failed
Mutual
him.
failure.
And they're about to do this again, because what they did to Daniel Jones in 2019, they drafted him. He had a head coach get the most out of him. Then they fired that head coach. Shitty OC, shitty head coach comes back in, and they just kept cycling things around him. Never gave him an opportunity to grow. The Giants are about to do the same thing. A desperate general manager is about to force a quarterback pick in the first round of this year's draft, and then after a year of failure once again, they're probably going to clean house, fire everybody, and what you're going to have is a quarterback going into his second season, probably after a terrible failed rookie season, and they're going to ruin his career. They're either going to have to replace him or force it to work, and new coaching's going to come in. They're probably going to fuck that up too. So I don't know. I feel bad for whichever quarterback gets drafted, because he's going into the absolute least desirable situation possible for a rookie quarterback.
Yep, and I would like to throw in a couple more things that John Mara just said into the ring right now. He said that he wants Daboll to give up play calling. And he said that he basically said he wants them to fire Shane Bowen. He said he was extremely critical of the defense. He did not like how he watched the opposing teams went up and down the field against the Giants. So Shane Bowen, see ya. Lou Anarumo, that's probably the next man up for the Giants, because he just got fired by the Bengals, and Bengals had one of the worst defenses this season. Of course, they did have some injuries and some severe lack of talent on that side of the ball, but we'll see what the Giants do at DC. I do think Shane Bowen is on the outs, but Daboll, let's talk about that. Him giving up play calling. This is what I'm talking about, though, dude. Like, snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. You know the Office reference. You'll find that funny. But it's like Brian Daboll didn't have play calling, took over play calling, and now he's going to give up play calling. What kind of, talk about dysfunction? That is what it looks like. That is what dysfunction looks like. 3 straight years, you're changing the play caller on offense. How is any quarterback supposed to survive that, right? The question is, if he gives up play calling, who's calling plays? Are they going to fire Mike Kafka? Mike Kafka's under contract for 2025. Are they going to give him play calling duties back? I guess. I don't know. This is just such a mess, man. It's such a freaking disaster. No coaches want to come here. The coaches we have don't want to be here. Mike Kafka's literally in prison right now. He spoke to the media the other day. He's like, I don't know, I'm under contract for next year. Like, he wants to leave. He can't leave. I mean, he could quit.
He tried so hard to leave last offseason.
He tried to, and he would have been, if he went to the Seahawks, he would have been such a better spot, because Geno, obviously, a much better system in general. But, if you're Mike Kafka, maybe you could convince yourself, okay, if they give me play calling back and I get a quarterback with Neighbors, I can work with that. And Tracy's obviously great, and we have some pieces, but this team needs more reinforcements. This is turning out to be Jerry Reese at the end of his tenure. This is turning out to be Jerry Reese spending stupendous amounts on Olivier Vernon, Damon Snacks Harrison, who we love, by the way, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. He's spent stupid money. Janoris Jenkins, so much money at the end of his career with the Giants to try and save his life. Joe Schoen, the only way forward, in my opinion, for Joe Schoen right now is they have to get so lucky that they've managed to find a good DC that's going to help turn that defense around. They need to bring in someone with some experience, in my opinion. Again, who that's going to be, I don't know. Lou seems like the guy with the most experience, but again, he's coming off one of the worst seasons. John Mayer's not going to be happy with that. They'll settle for what they can get at this point. The draft, they have to knock this draft out of the park. They have to knock this draft out of the park. And not every single draft pick has to start immediately, by the way. Every single year, everyone's starting because we have no veteran talent. So, this year, in my opinion, first round, and I kind of want to transition a little bit towards this draft with the Tennessee Titans and the Browns now having a better chance of even taking a quarterback. Let's assume that they're both going quarterback. To me, I know you're a little bit of a different opinion than I am, and I want to get your take on it as well. I'm Cam Ward. If you either take Cam Ward, if you don't end up with Cam Ward, this is my opinion, you go BPA. You take Cam Ward if he's there at 3, but you can't trade up because no one's going to want to trade with you now that the Patriots won. So if I can't get Ward, I can't get a top quarterback. I am taking Travis Hunter at 3. I'm going BPA. And I'm taking a quarterback maybe in the second round, like a Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe, somebody with an elite trait. I don't know, something like that. If Drew Aller ends up declaring, I'll take him at 3 too. I would take him at 3 because of the upside, and I think that he has similar traits to Josh Allen. I think that maybe that's how you could sell it to Mara and say, oh, we could take him and see if there's something there with Brian Daboll being able to coach him up. That's the direction I would go in, but. For now, the way that things stand, I'm going Cam Ward or BPA. That's my opinion. I know you have a differing opinion on that.
That's you essentially asking the Giants to do exactly what they did last offseason, this offseason, and
They got Neighbors,
sure.
Neighbors is
And
a
they still
superstar.
fucking suck.
They do absolutely, but
they're not gonna stop sucking until they draft a quarterback.
And I agree with that. But I don't like Sanders enough to mortgage a top 3 pick on him. I want to go for something that's a blue chipper. I want to go for something that's as close to guaranteed as possible because I don't think Sanders is going to be a good NFL quarterback.
How often does a guaranteed quarterback come around? It never does. Trevor Lawrence was guaranteed,
Absolutely.
And he's considered a bust by many. So,
but I don't think. Look, for me, I think Cam Ward has the most upside, so I would do that. But I don't love I don't love Sanders enough to spend a pick on him at that level. That's just my personal opinion.
I don't either, but I'd do it anyway. And
I would rather take someone in the second round with an elite trait like a Milroe or a Jackson Dart. I wouldn't say Jackson Dart is an elite trait, but he's a more balanced quarterback. Like I would rather go for something like that than take Sanders at 3. That's just my personal opinion. I know you can differ from that, and that's fine.
Yeah, I respect your personal opinion. I do, and I get your thought process on it. I'll just explain my differing opinion, and it's good because for this entire offseason, we're going to have a lot of content where we just debate on this and fight about it probably. We'll probably start yelling at each other in a month from now. So I get it. Like, you don't want to force the quarterback. I've been saying this for the past several weeks. The Giants forcing Daniel Jones at 6 in 2019 was not bad practice. You needed a quarterback, you take a quarterback. That wasn't the problem. The problem is that they forced him to try and work for 6 years. After about 2 years, we pretty much all knew what we had in Daniel Jones. We needed to move on, and then in that 2021 draft, or 22, 20, whenever it was, draft a quarterback and move on. That was the problem with drafting Daniel Jones. Yes, they overdrafted him, but he had a good rookie season. After the second season, you probably knew, all right, this is his ceiling, let's move on. The problem isn't the fact that the Giants drafted a quarterback in the top 10. It's the fact that they haven't drafted a quarterback since then. That's the problem. 6 years without drafting a quarterback is egregious. That is malpractice. The only way you land a quarterback in the NFL is by throwing darts at the board. Eventually, you have to hit a bullseye. It's the rule of probability. It's just an analytics thing. The Giants haven't even drafted a single quarterback since then. I don't know how that's possible. Even the San Francisco 49ers, take them as the perfect example of this. They mortgaged their entire future, traded up to the 3rd overall pick to draft Trey Lance. He flamed out after a year. You know what saved them? The fact that they were burning late-round picks on quarterbacks and drafted Brock Purdy in the 7th round of the following draft. That's the only reason they have a future and have a team right now. The San Francisco 49ers threw darts at the board. Giants haven't even taken one outside of the 1st round in 6 years, let alone one in the 1st round. That's the problem. You have to take a quarterback because you know what it is, Alex? You might not want to overdraft it. You might not want to force a quarterback. All of the best quarterbacks in the NFL were overdrafted or forced. You want to talk about Josh Allen, number 10 or 7, wherever he went to the Buffalo Bills at the time? They traded up to do that. They overdrafted him technically. There are a lot of people who felt like he shouldn't go early in the draft. Patrick Mahomes, a lot of people were stunned when the Chiefs traded up to draft him, thought that he was overdrafted. Look around the league. Guys get overdrafted. Maybe these teams aren't fully confident because there is no guarantee. You could take the most sure thing quarterback at number 1 overall and they can be a bust. Or you could take the riskiest pick at the back end of the 1st round like the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson and you can draft a 2-time MVP and hopeful one-day Super Bowl champion. There is no such thing as a guarantee at the quarterback position. You are always playing craps, and that's why you just have to draft one. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter your level of confidence. You just have to bite the bullet and get it over with and hope that you are wrong if you don't think he's going to be a franchise quarterback. That's legitimately what you have to do. Hope that you're wrong. So even if the Giants can't draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or whoever they really truly want with the number 3 overall pick, you take the next best guy and you hope that you're wrong and that is the best guy. You have to do it. You have to throw a dart at the board and you have to hope that you've got the right people in place to develop the kid because otherwise you're never going to find your quarterback going through these reclamation projects and hoping that a corpse of a Daniel Jones or, some backup is just going to save your franchise. Those moments are few and far between. And the Giants do not have a Justin Jefferson, Kevin O'Connell pairing to revive a Sam Darnold to bring him back from the dead. They don't have that right now. They have a Brian Daboll and a second-year Malik Neighbors. Sure, Neighbors is great, but but you don't have the caliber of coaching necessary to take one of those reclamation projects and turn them into a franchise quarterback. You have to hope for a miracle if that's the case. So how do you fix this mess? You throw some darts at the board at the quarterback position. You finally take one. I don't know how the Giants have waited this long to finally take even a backup for Daniel Jones with potential starting upside. I mean, all of these mid-round quarterbacks that they could have drafted over the last several years, we'd at least have some competence, or at least some confidence that we have some competitiveness after we benched Daniel Jones if we had a rookie quarterback under contract. But we didn't. So we had to watch Drew Lock, Tim Boyle, and Tommy DeVito struggle through the rest of the year. You can't let that happen again. You have to draft a quarterback, whether it's in the first round, the second round, whatever, but you got to take one. You can't just sit on your hands again. You can't say, all right, we're going BPA if we don't get our guy. You got to take a quarterback and hope that they are your guy. It's got to be the other way around, in my opinion. You got to think backwards in this situation. Not wait to draft your guy, but hope that you draft a guy and he becomes your guy, in my opinion.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The Giants and what John Mara just said in public to the media and to us about Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll saying that they need to turn things around quickly. His patience is running out. You know what that means, guys? It means that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are now coaching and GMing to save their jobs, right? So now they are going to force the quarterback. Now they are going to force free agent moves. Now they're going to overspend. And here's the problem. The Giants are now one of the least attractive teams for coaches. You know, there's options like Matt Eberflus, who's, he was a bad head coach, but he's a good defensive coordinator. I mean, that defense fell apart after, he was fired. You have Robert Saleh. I would love Robert Saleh as DC. I think he's a solid coach. I think the Jets fired him prematurely, but I think he's a better DC than a head coach. I think he can manage a unit, but not a team necessarily. I wouldn't hate that. And he knows this media. He knows how to handle it. So there are options, veteran options the Giants can consider at DC, but Shane Bowen is absolutely dead. He's gone. I wouldn't be surprised if he was fired tomorrow. Now, especially after those comments from John Mara. So, looking at things now, this is the unfortunate reality, right? We hope we can manage to walk into a decent DC. But when it comes to players, right, draft, you take a guy and they have no choice but to play here, in most times. But when it comes to free agency, the Giants are now in a position where they can't get any great free agents. They have to overpay for them, right? So if you're DJ Reed and he basically just ripped the Jets to shreds over the last couple weeks, and he's like, yeah, I'm going, I'm leaving, I'm done, see ya, sayonara. He's gone, right? DJ Reed's leaving the Jets because they're incompetent from the inside out. Why would he want to go to another team that's facing the same issues right now? You can basically cross DJ Reed off of your docket if you want him. And I love DJ Reed. I would love to have him, but there's no way he's coming here. Charvarius Ward, next best option out there at cornerback. Probably not going to want to go from the 49ers to a well-coached team. And not to say that they've been good this year, but it's going to be tough they're going to have to overpay millions to get these guys here. And that's an example. That's another reason why this team has fallen so far, is that we now have to overpay for good free agents. So this team, you can't overspend. John Mara, Joe Schoen, he has money, but Daniel Jones' $20 million is still in the book, so he doesn't have a ton of money. And if I'm John Mara, I'm telling Joe Schoen, you better not sign any contracts that are going to kick in 2 or 3 years, backload contracts to screw any future regime. That will piss me off. You know what I mean? So he has to work with what he has, and it's 30 mil, 40 mil maybe, and he's going to have to allocate 20 to one of the top corners, and then, probably not even go that direction. He's probably going to get a CB2 caliber cornerback, and he's going to have to go get a receiver because we need to replace Darius Slayton, who was a Casper the Ghost out there this entire season. They didn't even freaking target him, and Jalen Hyatt's an absolute dud. He does absolutely nothing for this team. They don't want to use him. So, Anthony, looking at the needs that we have, and this week's draft class, there's only a handful of first-round graded players this year. They're going to have to force a quarterback, most likely. They're going to have to force a receiver in the second round, which I'm not against because I do like taking receivers in the second round. I like Egbuka from Ohio State. There's a couple of really good guys. But what is your perspective now? I don't see how this Giants team turns into a solid one in 2025. They don't have the necessary resources or the respect in the league to even command that type of progress, in my opinion.
I will not be shocked if this team wins 9 games next year. We've seen this before. 2016, the Giants have done this. Shitty roster, shitty team goes and spends big time in free agency. They win games the following year. The following year after that, everything will collapse. I could see the New York Giants winning 9 games next year and losing in the wild card round of the playoffs. But the following year, expect them to completely blow it up because they're going to fall apart by the seams after paying hundreds of millions of dollars to aging veteran free agents. You're mentioning these guys, DJ Reed, Travarius Ward, these guys who the Giants aren't going to be able to get. They are going to be able to get those guys because they're going to pay a fuck ton over the asking price to get those guys because they have to. Because the owner just issued a playoff mandate to the general manager and told him you have to win games next year. So what's he going to do? He's going to feel like he has to sign these free agents and he's going to overpay the shit out of them. So the Giants might win games next year. They might be decent, but they're not going to be set up for long-term success because they're going to be signing 30-year-old players who are about to regress significantly to long-term expensive contracts that are going to be stuck on their books for a very long time. We saw Jerry Reese do this when his back was against the wall, and we saw Dave Gettleman do the exact same thing when his back was against the wall. So yes, we will see the Giants probably win more than 3 games next year, but it's not going to be because they built a good roster. It's going to be because they threw a bunch of Band-Aids over gunshot wounds and hoped that would fix it. That's essentially what the New York Giants strategy is going to be in the 2025 offseason. They're going to overpay on big-time free agents, and they're going to buy themselves a season of wins to save their jobs, and they're going to be back for 2026. And in 2026, they're not going to have a whole lot of money to spend anymore, and everything's probably going to fall apart for them. So that's what I think the future of this team is, and that's why I'm pissed off by this. So when we get through the 2025 season, Alex, and the New York Giants are pulling off some upset wins, because it's going to happen, they're going to start winning more games, it's going to be fool's gold, in my opinion. I'm going to look at that and say, you know what? Let me see if they can do it again in 2026, because I would almost be willing to bet that half the team is going to regress. They're going to get a couple injuries and not have the money to buy depth pieces, and they're going to fall apart in 2026. That's probably what the result of a big spending free agency class in 2025 is going to be. So that was my main concern here. It's going to be a desperate offseason. Mm-hmm. And I'll repeat my point. Force the quarterback. That's what they should do. They should force the quarterback pick. But everything else that they're going to force is what's going to bite them in the ass. It's not going to be the fact that they actually finally drafted a quarterback. They need to do that. It's been 6 years, got to take a quarterback. It's going to be the fact that they forced an extra $5 million in the budget on a cornerback, an extra $6 million in a tackle in the free agency budget. It's going to be all of the different signings that they make in free agency for these aging veterans who are going to wash up after 1 year. Those are going to be the decisions that bite them in the ass. Forcing the quarterback isn't, because as long as you are not married to that quarterback and you're willing to move on after a year or two, you could reboot the roster pretty quickly even if you miss on the quarterback. That's fine. You just can't be married to him. But the problem is going to be that the fact of the matter is you've got a desperate GM who's going to make a bevy of desperate moves, and he is going to boost the Giants' payroll to an astronomical number, and he's going to have these ridiculous contracts all over the place because he needs to win games in 2025. And I'm not worried about 2025 now. I am not worried about the New York Giants in 2026 and the absolute disaster that we could see unfold that season following a big spending in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll read you a quote that John Mara dropped. He said, quarterback is the priority. That's obviously the number one issue for us going into this offseason, is to find our quarterback of the future. Whether that be via the draft or acquiring a veteran will be up to them to decide. My biggest concern with going out and acquiring a veteran and, let's say, giving him like $10 or $15 million on a 1-year deal, that's not a quarterback of the future. Because then you fall into the Daniel Jones trap, where if they overperform, you end up paying them a lot of money, right? And then you have no money to spend on rebuilding the roster in free agency, and this roster is so weak that we need the free agency money. I mean, just looking at our salary space, we have $54.5 million for 2025 with Daniel Jones' $20 million obviously factor in. We need to add substantial amount of support. We need to add offensive linemen. I would bring back Greg Van Roten on a 1-year deal. We need to add a cornerback. We need to add a receiver. We need to add some depth pieces. Azeez Ojulari is heading to free agency. There are guys leaving. Obviously, Slayton's leaving. So there are guys leaving we need to replace or retain. And we have to go out and make other moves. And Anthony, this team is situating themselves to have to draft for need again. Like, we're going to have to draft a receiver. We're going to have to draft a cornerback. We're going to have to draft an offensive lineman. We're going to have to make all these moves that we've been saying, like, just take BPA, because you walk away with better probability of hitting on a star that way, not drafting for need. The Giants have been drafting for need for years, and it isn't working. So what I think, obviously Neighbors was kind of two birds with one stone. It was receiver. We also needed a WR1. So it was, I'll kind of ignore that one. But I mean, listen, this team is positioned to take a quarterback. This team is positioned to draft one. They have to. I don't think they're going to go out and get a reclamation project like Carson Wentz or Justin Fields. Maybe they'll do that as a bridge, but they're not gonna go into next season with the intention of Justin Fields being a starter long term or Carson Wentz being a starter long term. In my opinion, I think they're going to draft somebody. So Anthony, in my opinion, the only way out of this is we have to pray that Drew Aller declares for the draft. We have to pray he will be a top 3 pick right now. Do you think that would entice him? Do you think that's something that he's thinking about? Like, all right, like if I declare I'm gonna be a top 3 pick and I can basically write that in stone. Do you think that's something that will weigh on his mind going into this draft process? Because I have to imagine you don't want to risk it. You know, if he gets hurt or something happens and he drops in a better class next year, he can basically write his way into a top 3 pick right now, and the Giants may have a chance to get him.
Aller, that is? Yeah, well, contingent on how he plays in the college football playoffs. He could have a terrible game. I think he plays on Thursday. He could throw 3 interceptions, and then he's not coming out in this year's draft because he won't be viewed as a first-round pick. If he goes out there, throws 5 touchdowns, 0 picks, well, then he's going to be a top pick in this draft class. It's going to be contingent on how he plays. And I think that obviously the Giants are going to have a lot to weigh. But you know what? At the end of the day, they're going to have to sell themselves on one of these quarterbacks. Like I said, they are going to have to force it. They have a top 3 pick. They have to take a quarterback no matter what. Whether that be Sanders, whether that be Ward, Aller, Milroe, Dart, one of these guys is going to be selected with the number 3 overall pick in the draft. That is the reality of the situation. For the Giants, we need to hope that Drew Aller goes into the college football playoffs and looks like a future superstar, just to give us another option in the top 3. That's the reality of the situation. Even if you don't believe that he's a first-round pick right now, even if you feel like, okay, you know what? I don't think he's going to be a good quarterback at the next level. You hope that you're wrong. Again, that's what it's going to be for Giants fans this offseason. It's not hoping that you're right. It's going to be hoping that you're wrong. Because we hope that we're wrong in Schoen and Daboll. We hope that they prove us wrong and that they are the right guys to lead the future of this team. Everything that I've said about all of my concerns here and how I think the Giants are going to behave desperately and they're going to screw their future, I hope I'm wrong about all of it. Drew Aller, maybe I don't think he's worth a top 5 pick. I hope I'm wrong. That's going to be the name of the game for the Giants this offseason. It's not hoping that you're right. It's hoping that you're wrong. So when we're looking at Aller and the college football playoffs coming up, if he balls out, it just gives the Giants more options. And that's what they need. They need options at the quarterback position because they don't have very many right now. Their options are going to be, well, maybe they can go hand $50 million to Sam Darnold. Maybe they can go hand $15 million to Justin Fields. Maybe they can hand $12 million to Jameis Winston. None of those guys are really realistic solutions here. The only solution is that you take a quarterback and you hope to God you hit a home run on that rookie quarterback and he is a future superstar. But you won't know until you at least try. Even if you're not fully convinced he's a future superstar, hope that you're wrong. That's going to be the name of the game for the Giants this offseason. No longer hoping that you're right. Hope that you're wrong.
Yep, and here's the problem is that the Giants now have to find their future quarterback in the worst possible draft class that we've seen in like years. You know what I mean? Like this is the Giants way. We position ourselves so we have the smallest amount of probability that a guy's going to hit. They should have taken one last year. That would have been better practice. But you go with Neighbors. Obviously, at the time, we didn't really want Penix. Maybe you had different opinion on that. You wanted JJ McCarthy. Bo Nix, we both of us really weren't in on. But like, I mean, they've worked wonders.
QB no matter what. I know for a fact I said on this channel, whether it's Penix, McCarthy, or Bo Nix,
right,
they got to take a quarterback no matter what. That was my take. Even though I didn't love those guys, it's the same idea that I have right now.
I get
you
that.
just have to take one because you have to throw a dart at the board.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that logic in hindsight. The one thing I would do is I think I would fire Mike Kafka and Shane Bowen, and I would try to pry Davis Webb here from the Broncos. Like, you had this idea. You wrote an article about this. Davis Webb is like, dude's a real deal. Like, he's a really smart coach, and he's helped Bo Nix become this diamond in the rough. You know what I mean? Like, we need to go out and get an assistant. And Davis Webb loves the Giants. Like, he would come here. Like, he would be willing to come here. And if you were able to get him and bring him to the Giants and pair him with a young quarterback, dude, talk about if you ended up with the ability to draft Drew Aller and you had Davis Webb coaching him, you might be able to salvage this. You might be able to get away with murder here. Him and Cam Ward, him and Sanders, any of them, like, I would do it. The problem is, like, you need to do whatever it takes to pair a young quarterback with a coach that's really going to do them justice, like really help them. I do not Shea Tierney. I don't even know what he does. Like, what does he do for the Giants? Because everybody in that room is hot garbage. Every quarterback that we've had over the last 5 years is hot garbage, except for Tyrod, who is injury prone, can't be trusted. So, Anthony, how do you envision this? If you're going to go out and get a quarterback, you're going to take that shot, you're going to throw that dart. What is your plan? Like, because you need to pair that player with a really good coach that is going to help them succeed instead of set them back. And Shea Tierney is not doing a good job. Like, I mean, you could argue that whole offensive coaching staff is not doing a good job right now.
Well, I mean, you mentioned it. I wrote that article about Davis Webb. I would love to see the New York Giants hire him as their offensive coordinator. He's currently the quarterback's coach for the Denver Broncos, so he's learning from Sean Payton, one of the proven brightest offensive minds that's coached in the NFL over the last 2 decades. And he's coaching currently Bo Nix, who had a very good rookie season. So if the Giants are going to replace Mike Kafka, it should be Davis Webb. Davis Webb was with the New York Giants. He is a coach in the NFL right now because of Brian Daboll, while he was here as the third string coach. As a third string quarterback of the New York Giants. Daboll gave him coaching duties. He wasn't a player as the third string quarterback. He was an assistant coach, essentially. He went on with a letter of recommendation from Brian Daboll to coach for the Denver Broncos. So that's who I think the New York Giants should target this offseason. I think that should be their number one priority, is to get Davis Webb back in this building. He's one of the brightest young coaches in the NFL, and if you read about the work that he did with the New York Giants years ago as a backup quarterback, you would realize that he was more of the quarterback's coach than Shea Tierney truly was. Just go read about it. And I'm telling you, there's plenty of research you can find to support that argument. And if that's the case, that's who the New York Giants need to get back in their building. In 2022, those quarterbacks did play better. Daniel Jones played the best season of his career. How much of that can be attributed to Brian Daboll or Shea Tierney or Davis Webb is the missing factor here that we don't discuss enough. So that would be my number one priority if I were Brian Daboll this upcoming offseason. Get Davis Webb back in this organization and back in this building. But outside of that, I mean, you still have to get the quarterback right. You have to take a swing. You have to get a rookie in here, and you have to find somebody who's a moldable ball of clay that you hope can be the future of this franchise. Even if you're not fully convinced, again, you got to go ahead and take him anyway and hope that you're wrong. So that's going to be my MO, and that's going to be my mantra for this offseason. Just throw a fucking dart at the board. Just take a swing. Swing for the goddamn fences for once. Stop playing it safe. Stop sitting on your hands. Yeah, you can sit there and make the argument, well, the 2026 quarterback class looks like it's going to be a whole lot better. Doesn't matter. Take the quarterback now. And you know what, Alex? If the quarterback sucks as a rookie, you're probably picking number 1 overall with a new GM who takes a quarterback anyway. That's the whole point. You have to throw a dart at the board because it doesn't stop you from throwing another one just a year later. I'm not going to be married to Cam Ward if the Giants draft him number 3 overall. If that's what happens. You know how much I like Cam Ward, Alex. You know I think he's going to be a franchise quarterback. You know I was even down to draft him in 2024. But if the Giants take him number 3 overall and they still have the number 1 overall pick in 2026 and the quarterback that's number 1 on the board there has a higher grade than the one that Cam Ward came out of college with, goodbye to Cam Ward. I am taking the quarterback. That's got to be your mindset. Throw darts at the board because the teams that do that, the teams that take chances at the quarterback position, those are the teams that strike gold, hit home runs like Aaron Judge. That's what the New York Giants need to do because right now they haven't taken a swing in 6 years. That's why they're in quarterback purgatory and hell. That's what's going on here. So I'm taking a swing on a quarterback in the top 3 picks of this year's draft, whether that's Sanders, Aller, or Ward. And if we still suck in 2025 and have a number 1 overall pick and a new GM in 2026, if I'm John Mara, I'm not saying, hey, you got to build this team around that rookie that Joe Schoen just drafted. Hell to the fucking no. I'm saying you build this team however you want. Clearly, Joe Schoen got it all wrong. I'm not putting my faith in the quarterback that he drafted. You could take whatever quarterback you want. You can keep Ward. You can trade Ward. Just using Ward as the example. Maybe it's Aller. Whoever. You can keep this quarterback. You can sell him. You can make him a backup. I don't care. New GM in 2026 gets carte blanche to do whatever he wants. I'm not forcing anyone from Joe Schoen's shitty tenure on the next general manager. That's got to be the mindset. So, again, force the quarterback because you have to this offseason, but don't be afraid to do it all over again the following year.
Well, that's the only way. Like, they have to be willing to take a risk at this point. Like, they have no choice. Their backs are against the wall. John Mara's basically said, do whatever you got to do to get the future quarterback. And that is just such bad practice because you would prefer to have a new regime in place to make an objective decision. But now he's backed them into a wall, said, you better figure it out and get the future quarterback. He makes it sound so easy, though. You know what I mean? It's like they're just going to find the future quarterback. It doesn't work that way. Joe Schoen has proven to make the most catastrophic mistakes possible at the position over 3 years. And why would anyone have faith in that guy to do the right job right now?
I don't have faith in him. That's why he should have been fired. But
Yeah.
I'm also going to make the argument that
I
the
mean, of course you have to
Giants have
take the risk. I
they've
get that.
made it harder on themselves. Like you're
They
saying,
have.
it's easier said than done. But they've also made it harder than it needs to be because over the last 6 years, they haven't drafted a single quarterback in the first, second, fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh round. I don't know how the
Yeah.
fuck that's possible. I seriously don't. Even when the fucking New England Patriots had Tom Brady, they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo in the second round. How is it that the New York Giants didn't give a single ounce of competition to Daniel Jones, of all people, over 6 years? It's almost impossible that we've gone this long without drafting a quarterback, but somehow the Giants made it possible. Even, hey, the Detroit Lions, the best roster in the NFL, the best team in the NFL right now, they drafted Hendon Hooker 2 years ago. Even though they had Jared Goff, their franchise quarterback, who put up 40 touchdowns, they still drafted a quarterback. All of the best teams do, because at the very least, you've got a backup. At the very best, you've got a future franchise quarterback. How the Giants don't understand that strategy is beyond me. I feel like I'm crazy right now. The Giants are the only team that doesn't understand the strategy. Even the Washington football team, Commanders, Redskins, whatever you want to call them, when they drafted RG3, they also drafted Kirk Cousins. The first one flamed out, the second one became a franchise quarterback. It's common practice across the NFL, and it has been for a long time, and the Giants are the only franchise that doesn't understand it. So, I'm standing by this. I'm going to stand on this throughout the entire offseason. Fucking take a quarterback. Force it. You have to throw a dart at the board because the fact that the Giants are in this mess is a result of them not drafting a quarterback in any round for the last 6 years. I don't know how that even is possible for that to happen. I don't know if it's because they thought Daniel Jones was too sensitive and he wouldn't help a rookie quarterback coming in. Whatever the problem was that prevented them from drafting a quarterback is beyond me because every team around the NFL throws darts at the board in the middle rounds at the quarterback position, except for the New York Giants. No more of that. Take a QB, hope that you get it right, and if you don't, move on and do it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you have to take a shot. At this point, like, they have no choice. They've been backed into a corner. We're just gonna find out what that looks like. What does it look like to get a quarterback right now? Because if the Browns and Titans take one, you're in hell. Like there is no one left to take. I'm not taking Milrow at 3. I'm not taking Jackson Dart at 3. I'm not taking any of those guys at 3. I don't even want to take Sanders in the top 5. You know, for me, it was Cam Ward or BPA because, yeah, I think they have to draft one, and they're going to draft one, whether it's in the first or second round. But I'm not forced. I get you have to force it, and I get, like, all these things, and you just keep taking shots. But you have a chance to take, like, a blue chip prospect over a guy like Sanders, who I don't think is even a top 20 pick. I don't like Sanders as a prospect. I don't like him as a player. Like, I think he's a fine player, and I would understand. I would root for him if the Giants took him because he'll be on quarterback, and, like, I'm a Giants fan. But, like, at this stage in my evaluation, I don't think he's a great fit. I don't think he's going to be a great NFL player. I think his ceiling is Geno Smith. It could be anybody else, but that's just the player I see. Like, you know, got some decent arm talent, but he's not going to win us a Super Bowl. He's going to keep us in purgatory for many years. That's the way I see it. I don't see the upside that Cam Ward has. I love Cam Ward for his upside. I'm willing to take a shot on that. That's just my personal opinion. We're going to go back and forth like this all offseason. It'll be fun. Good debates and whatnot. But I do think the Giants are in a situation where they have everything to lose and not much to gain because John Mara just put them, you know, the regime, the current regime, in a closet and said playoffs are bust. You know, and like doing that when you force them to figure out the quarterback position, it's not good practice, man. It's objectively backward logic, and that is what this team has been good at lately, doing the opposite of what seems like the right thing at every single turn. You know, they do the opposite of what seems right, and we just hope the only ounce of positivity I can float, Anthony, before, you know, I'll let you wrap it up here, is that we have to pray that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have learned from their catastrophic mistakes. They've made every mistake in the book, every single one. Like, literally every single decision they could make that would make this organization worse, they made. So we just have to pray to God they've learned a thing or two about how to avoid catastrophic choices like they've somehow find themselves making. So that's the last piece of information I can offer. I'm sure we'll have many more discussions about this moving forward.
A ton. Going forward, we're going to have a lot to discuss. But again, what you just said right there is why my mantra, my fucking mindset for this offseason is going to be, I hope that I'm wrong. You know, that's really all I can say. I don't believe in Joe Schoen. I don't believe in Brian Daboll. I think they've made too many mistakes and they've proven to be bad at their jobs. I hope I'm wrong. That's it. Your argument, maybe you don't think Shedeur Sanders is a franchise quarterback. You're going to have to hope that you're wrong because the Giants are probably going to land him. So that's going to be the mantra. I mean, seriously, There were so many people who doubted the Bills when they drafted Josh Allen. Those guys were wrong. So many people that doubted the Chiefs when they drafted Mahomes. Those guys were wrong. That's really just the reality of it. You're going to have to force a quarterback, and you're going to have to hope that you're wrong and that you didn't force it, that you took the right guy. That's just got to be the mindset going forward, and we'll see how it goes. And obviously, this is a disappointing result for both of us today, Alex. But again, let's just hope that we're wrong. Let's see how this unfolds over the next few months. The Giants have a lot of big decisions to make outside of just retaining Schoen and Daboll. They have to decide about the OC. They have to decide about the DC. They have to decide what their free agency and draft plans are and who their quarterback is going to be. A lot of big decisions and a lot to discuss here on Fireside Giants. So, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants, I guess.